How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of a Playmakers View. I'm your host, as always, Jamie Burdish. I appreciate you guys joining the show. Today's guest is Nolan Rappé. Nolan is a physical therapist over at SSM. He does a great job over there. Today, he's going to be talking about his journey as a ball player, how that transitioned into him becoming a physical therapist, why he does his job today, the athletes that he's worked with, and all that good stuff. So, hope you guys get a chance to learn about him and what he's doing. He's a great guy, loves to help people, and he has helped a ton of different people. He's a man of a lot of different traits. So you guys are going to get a chance to learn about him. And here we go. All right, guys. So we're going to get right on to things. Thank you, Nolan, for joining the podcast. This is going to be awesome. I'm super excited. We finally got a time to sit down and talk. So, first off, can you explain to the viewers who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me this morning. I know we were trying to connect and get a time to do this. This is going to be fun. So thanks a lot for having me. So my name is Nolan Rappé. I am a physical therapist with SSM Health Physical Therapy in St. Louis, Missouri. Um, I kind of consider myself to be more of what's called a performance physical therapist. So I have some education that helps me kind of bridge the gap between kind of your run of the mill physical therapy and the more kind of sport performance side of things. That's kind of served me well and helped me communicate really well with strength coaches, pitching coaches, hitting coaches, anything in between to help get the athlete not only kind of back to their sport, but to get them back hopefully in better shape than when they were before they were quote unquote injured. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit what I get to do, kind of in my daily job. I also consult for pitching coaches in the area. Been very fortunate to make some awesome connections. So I do some things that are a little bit different, where um, I analyze mechanics, whether it's more on okay, how do we get somebody to be in this position more consistently, or hey, so and so is having some shoulder pain, some elbow pain. What are we seeing here mechanically that might contribute? So my job is to kind of connect the two, and it's served us well so far. And I absolutely love doing it. I'm starting to get into more of the hitting side of that, um, drawn on some of the experience that I've had as a player, and hopefully moving forward with that a little bit in the future as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about you playing baseball yourself before we get into more about what you do. So tell us a little bit about your journey as a ball player. You went to QU, so we have that connection. I transferred from
Sure.
there. So I want you to explain your time there, what that meant to you, and just explain some things that you did there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I went to 2 years of junior college, graduated in 2010. So I was at junior college 2011, 2012, and then ended up transferring into Quincy University. Um, Quincy was awesome. Quincy was, as you well know, a really just well-ran program, um, ran by former professional baseball player, and he demanded that kind of effort, demanded that kind of dedication from you. Um, whether it was multiple sessions a day, hitting and actual practice and lifting, that focus and that professionalism was demanded out of you, and it was a very very competitive environment too. And that was the probably the most eye-opening thing for me coming from a small town. Tend to a town as small as where I came from, you tend to be kind of that big fish small pond. And even going to the junior college that I did, it wasn't nearly as strong as some of the baseball junior colleges down here. So it still was a little bit of that big fish small pond mentality, and you get dropped into the giant kind of talent ocean that is that solid of level of Division II baseball. And it was a very eye-opening experience. And the biggest thing for me was, I think, probably the confidence issue, right? So I was not nearly as confident as I kind of thought that I was. And you get to a situation where you have kids maybe that are much more talented than you, and you have to try to figure out, okay, well, I want to play. So I got to figure out how I can get myself on the field. And you start to kind of analyze, okay, well, physically I can do most of the things that these guys can do. So what's holding me back? And I found that mentally I wasn't prepared to really kind of challenge myself, challenge others at that level. So that was probably the biggest thing that I had to figure out that is now translated into what I do on a daily basis, whether it's working with a 12-year-old or working with our pro guys. It's you got to have the confidence in what you do, and that confidence comes through various avenues. It comes through preparation. Um, it just was amazing how that shaped my mentality as not only a therapist but just in everyday life is to understand that if you've put the legwork in, that there's no reason you shouldn't be confident in what you do. And especially once you start working with guys at the more elite level, guys and gals at the more elite level, they can sniff that out. If you don't have confidence in what you're doing, then they're not going to be confident, in you as a therapist or as a strength coach or as just a professional in general.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that experience for me, it for sure, and again, you being there and experiencing that environment, it was you better have some thick skin because man, for the better. I think somebody like me that maybe didn't have as thick a skin as I needed to, um, it is sink or swim. So that was kind of the how baseball translated more into my professional life, or that program translated more into my professional life. Um, Probably the most important thing. I'll never forget, some conversations I had with Coach Raby that, heck, I don't even know if he would remember having those conversations to this day. But they did make a nice impact on me in a positive manner, of just trying to become more confident in the things that you do, every single day, and confident in your abilities. So that program, I always tell people that if I could go over and do it again, if you gave me 100 chances, I would choose Quincy University 100 times out of 100 because of what it did for me as a person, the connections that I made, taught me, like I said, how to be a professional. Um, it was a very good experience.
yeah. I think that's awesome. I think that was going to be one of my questions, and I think you already covered it. Is how did that experience, transfer over to you becoming a physical therapist? And I think it's really important that, as a college athlete, there's something to learn. It's not just about playing the game, but you're learning something from when you're playing, from the coaches, from your teammates, and all that stuff. My next question for you is: did you always have a goal of being a physical therapist, or did that kind of transfer over, or did you spark that idea when you were in college, from a friend, from someone in your family? How did you get that idea
Sure.
of becoming a physical therapist?
You know, I've had that question a couple times. Patients always like to ask you that question. How did you get involved in physical therapy? Um, and it's an interesting one. I would say I did have some minor injuries in high school that I needed a few weeks of physical therapy. I always battled some shoulder injuries, kind of early on, or I guess mid high school years, kind of that late sophomore year into junior year. Had some shoulder stuff. Um, I was a three sport athlete, so football, basketball, baseball, and you have to find time in there to try to get in the weight room, and sometimes some of those things you do in the weight room maybe bleed into um, your season to where I was doing some things that maybe weren't great for my shoulder because of trying to lift for football in the summer and then try to play baseball, and then had some shoulder issues early in college. Kind of same idea. It sparked an interest, as to why am I continuing to have this kind of same thing over and over again, even though I'm trying to change and try to be smarter with the things that I do. So it did spark that interest. I knew I wanted to do something with regard to sports performance, whether it was strength and conditioning or physical therapy. So I tended to have some pretty solid interest in kind of the medical side of things. I figured that physical therapy was a perfect fit because through that lens of physical therapy, as I do now, I get to do some more performance based, type sessions to where, again, my job is to bridge the gap between performance and rehab. So having that background has been helpful.
Yeah. So what do you think is the favorite part of your favorite part of your job when you wake up every day and you realize this is what I got to do? What do you do it for?
It's very interesting. I remember having, just like anybody does, one of those days at work where some things happen, you get frustrated, and my dad happened to call me later that evening for something, just completely unrelated, just to chat, and he could tell that I had kind of a little bit of a rough day, quote unquote. Again, that's all relative, right? And I will never forget he said something that always resonated with me, and even my wife is in healthcare too, so she has those days in healthcare that are a little bit frustrating. He said, "You have to understand that you get to go to work every day knowing that you have a chance to truly help someone in some way, shape, or form. Then you get to leave work that day knowing that you have done that." Not many people, not everyone get to go to work and have that ability to make an impact on somebody every single day. And there are days where you wake up, you look at your schedule, and you're like, man, this is going to be a rough one. But those words always seem to kind of keep me in check. Where the beauty of my job, whether it's helping a 65-year-old lady carry groceries in from the car without pain, or play with her grandkids without pain, or it's somebody that gets paid to play baseball for a living, trying to help them do their job pain free. It's such a cool environment to be where I'm at, that um, I love being able to. The other day I was laughing to myself. I had an 11-year-old baseball player for an hour, and then the next hour was a minor league baseball player. You literally get to see the entire spectrum and work with the entire spectrum. And I love that challenge because there's a different attitude that you have to take with both of those athletes, right? You're more playful with the 11, 12-year old and the things that you do in your rehab setting. And then when that minor league or major leaguer walks in, you got to lock in and understand what they need. And, it's a completely different tone. And I love that challenge, and that's something that, because of being in more of your typical kind of outpatient orthopedic setting, that's something very unique that I get to do, that I really enjoy that challenge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I really appreciate you talking about that because that, again, was going to be one of my questions is asking you what your job meant to you and why it is that you do it and all that good stuff. So I want to leave with one question. I know you talked about a few different things about your attitude and the way to go about things. But for viewers out there, what do you think is a good message for them to help them achieve their goals and just keep going through these tough times again because COVID's still around? Some people need motivation here and there, so, what are some motivational tips or words that you have for the viewers out there?
Yeah, I think in kind of my own personal journey, and we talk about confidence and growing as a person, the biggest piece of advice and the biggest thing that I have tried to kind of take and implement in with the things that I do every day is to be, again, more process based than kind of outcome based. That's kind of starting to become a little bit of a cliche. Um, what I mean by that is, my job is to focus on the things that I can control, right? So, unfortunately, there are times where the human body is going to heal, itself in ways that we don't have control over. But what I can control is the communication that I have with each patient. Again, more process based. The exercises and the plan that we develop for them, both kind of short term and long term. So, being more process based instead of outcome based in any profession, I think serves people well. Um, it definitely has shaped the way that I do things on a daily basis. And I think that that's something that, especially in times like this, where there are so many factors that we can't control, being a little bit more process based and understanding that, okay, my day starts at 7 a.m. I have XYZ to get done. How am I going to do that? And I'm going to focus on each task solely without worrying about what goes on next. It's being present, focusing on that process, and then just kind of letting the outcome fall through where it will.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. That's a great piece of advice. And I want to thank you, Nolan, so much for joining the podcast and sharing your story. If anyone has some trouble with any sort of pain or wants to go see Nolan and get some good advice, hopefully that's not the case. But Nolan is great at what he does, and he's making athletes get a chance to go to the next level, and he did that for me as well. So I really appreciate it. I want to thank you guys for joining the show, and we'll be back with you guys next week for another episode.